How's everybody doing? Hope everyone's doing well. I'm chilling in an office building, waiting to get let into another part of the facility to do some work. I've been traveling a lot for work, nonstop, which is why I haven't made any videos at all anytime soon or lately. It's just been very, very, very busy. COVID's kind of made my kind of work extremely, extremely busy. But I noticed that Leticia has been she's been pumping out a lot of videos and stuff, and I unfortunately, whenever I'm back in the States, when I meet up with veterans, when I'm trying to help out, I run into a lot of the same shit with Leticia that people around Leticia are dealing with. Um, and I'm sure there are people out there wondering, like, why can't seemingly somebody like Leticia get help? And like, she does a lot of stupid things. For example, she has a car that she can't afford. Her car payment is like ridiculously high. Her car payment is basically would take up her entire um, payout for Section 8 housing. I want to say her car payment's around like $500, $600 a month, and I'm not even sure if that includes insurance or not. And I get guys like this all the time where I have to sit down and try to talk to them about their finances because they're in a very, very what's the word? Precarious situation. I apologize. I've been using French for the last month and a half, and uh, going back to English is kind of messing with me a little bit. I don't have anything prepared. But one of the things for a lot of folks to apply for different kind of benefits is you have to basically be poor enough. And you'll be amazed at how poor you have to be to get certain things. Like, for example, I get a lot of guys that will get into legal trouble, and they'll seem to think that I'm able to get them a public defender, and I'll have to tell them, like, hey, in this area, you can't own a car. Like, basically, the state requires that you sell your car first. You have to show that you're destitute before you can get a public defender. And a lot of people don't understand that a public defender will be provided to you, even if you're poor enough, but you will have like filing fees and stuff. These costs do add up. That's like when I think Leticia's mom had to pay her bail. She had to pay more than that bail. Like she probably had to pay like probably about $50 to $100 more than the bail because there's all these different processing costs and so on. So I'll have guys that expect to be able to get food stamps and all, and I have to tell them like it's not necessarily they make too much money. They have too many assets, and the asset level is so low. The other thing is if you get certain benefits, you'll be disqualified from other certain benefits. This is where I run into a lot of people that imagine that like the average poor person is really stupid, and usually if somebody's working poor, they tend to be really really smart because you have to be smart to kind of make your way around all these different restrictions and stuff. Like I've worked with like single moms who like they could crunch numbers in their head like they were a calculator, and they would have to do this to try to get their food stamps to last by the end of the month and stuff. But with somebody like Leticia, I'm sure that like the whole reason that she doesn't apply for a lot of these programs is that she has been told by people you are worth too much money and like you need to downgrade that car, and it really seems like Leticia is unwilling to make those decisions to make her life any more uncomfortable than it already is, and this just causes her issues. Like I do have to say I feel so bad for the people that live in the I want to say she's living with her mother in a trailer home, and I'm sure the people that reside around that trailer in other trailer homes must hate this family. They just must. A little bit of background on myself. I grew up in a really poor situation. Unfortunately, my father couldn't regularly work, mainly because he had severe mental disorders. My dad's better now, but like as a kid, my dad would have to disappear for like months, if not a year on end, to go into a mental hospital, and that would be really devastating for the family. And I come from a rather big family, so like we would have some really tough times, and this could be this ended up me spending a lot of time living in really, really bad areas, like public housing and stuff. And one of the things that I just got used to as a kid is being exposed to DV calls, domestic violence calls. Like not from my parents, but like my neighbors and shit. I remember as a kid, I used to hear this guy living above me just wailing on his wife all the time, all the time, and it kind of messes you up. I'm sure that like the neighbors have told their kids to stay the frick away from Leticia and her brother Angel and so on. Like her brother Angel is really really stupid. It's kind of shocking to me how stupid he is. First of all, he's a gangbanger, which is pretty stupid. And then he's been arrested a bunch of times. He's in prison for like cocaine distribution. And then he was like accused of participating in a murder or a shooting at the very least that killed a guy. And then like there's like this long restraining order against his nieces. There's allegation that he's inappropriate with these kids. Um, but the thing that breaks me about somebody like Angel, and I will never understand this, is back in the day, in the ancient Roman era, like if you were a slave that ran away from where you were a slave and you got caught, they wouldn't necessarily kill you, but what they would do is they would brand your face with like the Roman term for runaway. They would have the Romans were really big on their acronyms, and they would like let's say it was R for runaway. They would scar your face up with a big ass R, so that anyone that interacted with you knew that you were a runaway, and you would wear that sin, that punishment for the rest of your life. Similarly, like if you were a Roman that lied under oath about another Roman citizen, they would cut your nose off. And so that people would know when they interacted with you that you were not to be trusted. Angel's got a gang tattoo on his fucking face. Excuse my language, sorry. He's got a gang tattoo on his face. He literally paid somebody to scar his face up, to advertise to anybody that walks into him that he's a gangbanger. I will never understand people that do this. I legitimately don't. And I say this as somebody that has really bad burns on the side of my face. Like my ear is melted off. Effectively, it looks like someone took a blowtorch to me from an explosion in the military. And I will get people staring at me, and I jokingly will tell people, but I am concerned they think about this. Like, no, I don't cook meth. Like, I was in an accident in the military. Like, an incident in the military, I should say. It wasn't really an accident. And so, like, I recognize that people have to look. They can't help but look. I've learned to, like, be fine with, like, kids staring and stuff. It also doesn't help that I'm a very tall, big guy. I could be very, very intimidating. And I don't mean to be, but it's one of the things that I have to bear. I cannot imagine paying someone so that people would respond to this. You know, like I can't imagine having a choice in the matter. And for whatever reason, like Angel's dumb enough to do that. And all three of these people should not be living together. I really don't get what the mom is doing by letting her two kids that are in their 30s keep living there, because they're never going to progress past this infantile stage. My son is pretty young, and he knows to do his chores without asking. It is expected of him. And he knows how to talk to his mother, and he knows how to talk to me. And one of the things I'm very proud of is I've been told many times by other parents, hey, you got a really great kid. And I take a lot of pride in that because it takes a lot of work. But one of the things my son had to learn, and I think all children have to learn this is the whole reason why the terrible twos are known as terrible twos, because that's when you're teaching your kid this. But it's very important for your child to learn that you must modify your behavior around others. Because if you don't modify your behavior, somebody else will. Like my son learned, I will modify his behavior, and he doesn't want me to do that. He wants to modify his own behavior. And the whole thing with like Leticia and her brother Angel, they don't know how to modify their behavior. They can't. They give up that responsibility, and that ends up falling apart, falling upon on the court system. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there wondering, like, why hasn't Leticia been rounded up if her bail's been revoked and stuff? The whole thing is the cops don't send out a SWAT team to just pick people up. That's a real waste of resources. They just wait for Leticia to like bring them to her. Like that's really how it works. I had a guy one time in my unit who went AWOL, and he was AWOL for a couple of days, and we weren't on deployment. We were, back home in our home facility. And I just called the guy up, and I was like, "Hey, man, you got to come back." And every once in a while, I'd get a new kid fresh to the unit. The pressures and stuff. A lot of these kids are living away from home for the first time, and they do something stupid. Like they get messed up on the weekend. They go a bit farther from base than they should, and then they're late coming back, and then they kind of decide, well, screw it, I don't want to go back. And so I would typically, like the 5 or 6 times that this ever happened, I'd call the kid up and be like, listen, you got one of 3 choices. Either you man up and you come back and you take your licks. 2, you stay where you're at until eventually you get stopped at like a DUI checkpoint or something. Somebody just cards you, and it'll show that you have an active warrant, and you're going to get put in the county lockup, and you're going to sit there until I'm able to convince a recruiter to pick you up and ride you back to base. And that can take a long time. And I was like, and that entire time is going to count against you at your Article 15. And it's going to get real painful. I was like, or 3, you try to run. And if you try to run, shred all your documents and try to live as a ghost. Because if you try to keep your name or anything, it'll eventually come back and bite you in the ass. And then we hit you for being a deserter. Well, we don't execute anymore, but it's one of those things that like the military will process you, but they don't actively send people out to find you because they really don't need to do that. And it's kind of the same way with like somebody like Leticia, in that I know a lot of people imagine that the crimes that she's accused of and the crimes that she is very adamantly documented committing, they are technically nonviolent crimes, and they're not going to be a high priority. And the state of Arkansas is not looking to lock up every single person that they could potentially do it. It's prosecutory discretion. It's the same thing like the cops. The cops don't arrest every single person for not driving without a seatbelt. They'll just give a ticket or whatever, because you can't just swamp the jails. States have to have a balanced budget kind of thing. And like the state does not want to have a pregnant woman delivering a baby in jail. They really don't. That's just a whole slew of costs and everything. So that's really what is kind of keeping Leticia out of jail. Now, she is doing everything she absolutely can to keep getting attention, and I do believe that they are eventually going to arrest her, and they're going to throw her in jail. Her mom's going to lose the bail money, which sucks for her mom because her mom doesn't look like she has that kind of money to waste and all. I will say this, I don't understand why her mom bailed her out. If Leticia is in jail, she's at least getting 3 healthy meals, and she's getting regular sleep, and she cannot continue to harass people and so on. She would be placed on medication, real medication, not just her marijuana and stuff. The marijuana thing really bugs the crap out of me, and it's not just the whole, she's pregnant, which she shouldn't be smoking. You shouldn't be smoking tobacco. You should be smoking anything. You should be vaping when you're pregnant. Like, they tell you not to drink freaking coffee when you're pregnant. Like, when my wife was pregnant with my son, I gave up everything. Because if my wife couldn't drink coffee, I wasn't going to drink coffee, kind of thing. And I was miserable, but that's what I did for my kid, and I did it for my wife, because I didn't want her just suffering by herself. So I made everyone at work suffer. But I get a lot of these guys that I'm trying to help out. I got a gentleman who's been out of the military now for about 3 or 4 years, and it's a very similar situation to Leticia, where He will not move off his mother's couch, and his mother is at her wit's end. And his mother's getting to the point where she can't really take care of herself anymore, and she can't trust her son to do a goddamn thing. And so she has already arranged end-of-life care for herself. Well, one of those things is when she goes into long-term care, the long-term care facility gets the house. And I've tried to sit down and explain to this guy that it's like, you need to start getting a job. You need to start getting a job because you're going to get kicked out. This house is worth way too much money. The retirement home, the long-term care facility owns this house. They own this house. And when your mom goes into the facility, they are coming in within a week. They will process this. It's a whole system they got. You will not be able to fight this. And before you know it, there will be county cops there to kick you out of this house. It is what it is. And it goes into one ear and out the other. And his big thing is all he does is he smokes weed all day. And he tries to argue with me that, no, it's my medication. Because he's got a bullshit weed card just like Leticia. And he's like, it's my medicine. It's better than anything the VA gives me. There's no side effects. And I've tried to talk to this guy like an adult. And I'm like, you can't tell me there's no side effects. There are clear side effects to you. And he goes, how do you figure? You put on 150 pounds since I've met you. You have no work ethic. You have no desire to leave the house other than to score weed. Like, you're living a horrible shell of an existence. I'm like, you don't have a normal sleep schedule. I was like, you'll call me up at 3 o'clock in the morning because you're confused because I set up a phone conference or phone call with you at 3 p.m. and you don't notice that it's 3 a.m. because you don't sleep. You're a regular sleep schedule. I was like, you're living a horrible ghost existence, and the only thing that's keeping you doing this is the weed that you're abusing. I'm not abusing it. It's my medicine. It's like it's these situations that you don't know how to really. You're kind of limited if people don't want to help. I will say this: I do believe that Leticia has experienced a lot of trauma in her life, and I believe that's messed her up. But what she has done is she has internalized that trauma and uses that as justification for being tremendously abusive to other people. She gets off on it. Like, she legit gets off on it. She spins her family up and then she hits the record button. She, used to go into these gyms to start fights with random strangers and stuff because she was bored all day. And she can't go to gyms anymore because I would bet my house that she is nationally banned from anytime gyms. Somebody like Leticia, really, it's to the point where with people like Leticia and her brother, you're trying to mitigate and limit the damage that they do to others. Because again, they are probably pure horrors to their neighbors. Can you imagine you're a single mom with like 2 kids? You got this trailer that you're barely making payments on. You're working like double shifts at like a Walmart and a freaking diner or something. And like you're balancing everything to get your kids to a shitty school every day. And you're hoping to save up enough money for like one of your kids to go to community college. You're just trying to do everything you can so your 3 kids have a better opportunity than you do. And you get home from those long-ass shifts, and you can hear those 3 idiots screaming at each other. Because that's the kind of crap that, like, my mom went through and what I went through as a kid. And it's awful. It's awful. And, like, I don't want to make it sound like I hate Leticia, her brother Angel, and her mom for being poor. I don't. I don't like them because they're poor and they keep committing crimes. Like, that's what I don't like about them. It's like, and it's a thing too, like that, like say you're that mom that's next door in the next trailer over and you're hearing all that drama and shit. And you got to tell your kids, don't go outside when he's outside or when she's outside kind of thing. You're working like a dog. You're probably on like food stamps and shit because you're probably working poor and shit. But they're getting more out of the government, like saying that they're crazy and stuff. Like, literally, you're working your ass off to subsidize a group of people that are making your life a living hell. I get asked by people all the time, why? Why do I work a job that most people would never dream of working? because I travel so much and I go into like crazy places. Like I've spent the last month speaking French, and I'm not in France and I'm not in Quebec. I'm in a very, very nasty place where the local official language is French. And the reason I'm doing this is so that my son and my wife will never be in a situation where they're living in shitty housing like I grew up in. It's just awful. It's awful. I really feel for those people stuck around them. But you know, if I was a volunteer trying to help out Leticia, I don't know what I would do. I would basically try to explain to her: one, you got to get off the internet. Two, you've got to get stable housing away from your family. And then three, we got to get you some kind of job. Like therapy's not enough. She says she's been going to therapy for years. That's simply not enough, because she goes to therapy and she treats it as a validation session. And if there is no person I've seen online that vehemently says over and over and over again that they are a vastly intelligent person that misuses words and mispronounces words. Like the authoritative thing, every time she says authoritative, I laugh, I chuckle. Like it's just, it is so humorous to me, because she talks down to everybody. Talks, especially her family, when she records these Jerry Springer sessions. But I'm figuring that she's gonna probably end up in jail relatively soon. She's probably gonna have the kid in jail. That kid is going to go immediately into. That kid's probably going to go into foster care. I don't believe that the mom is going to be. I don't know. They tend not to want to separate children, even from truly messed up families, because that kind of puts the kid onto the money roll for the states. So like Leticia makes it sound like the state's going to steal her kid. That's not really how it works at all. The state does not want to put kids into foster care. That costs the state money. They'd rather stick the kid with another family member. However, with the history of this family, I like the accusation. Like I have a hard time believing that they would necessarily put the kid in a household with Angel. Maybe they would try to put the kid into a family part of the family that's more distant from Leticia, that'd be willing to take the kid. But I think the kid's probably going to end up in foster care. And I don't say this lightly, because I served with a lot of guys I served with guys that aged out of foster care, meaning that they were never adopted. And I heard a lot of horror stories about the foster care system, but I think at least in the foster care system, there would be a chance that the kid gets adopted. I think the kid's going to have issues moving forward, just based on the amount of drugs that Leticia uses during the pregnancy. I don't believe for a moment that Leticia just uses weed. I think she uses other drugs as well. I think she uses any drug in front of her. I run into a lot of vets that are like this. They'll be like, yeah, I smoke a little bit of weed, a bud on the weekends, and I drink a little bit. And it's like, dude, I can see the track marks going up your neck. You don't even have, like your veins have collapsed in your arms. I'm not stupid. I just want to know what you're shooting up, just so I can try to figure out like what kind of addiction I'm dealing with here. Is it ice? Is it smack? Like, what is it, brother? Like, why are you lying to me? What do you think, I'm fucking stupid? And again, I've always gotten the vibe from Leticia that she is an upper. I think she does amphetamines. I think that's pretty much how she lost all the weight. I think she got addicted to over-the-counter diet pills. But I don't know. She also tends to spin herself up, so it's kind of hard to tell. I think it will be interesting when she has a kid when they drug test the amniotic fluid. The states require, every state does this, and so like even just weed, based on her criminal history and all, and like her history period, I think that along with the embryonic fluid testing positive for weed, I think that'll be enough that will prevent them from immediately handing over the baby to Leticia. Plus, again, she's probably going to be handcuffed to the bed, because she's probably going to be in custody when this happens. So this is just a really messed up situation, and again, this family has probably cost the state of Washington Wisconsin and Arkansas ungodly amounts of money. Dysfunctional people like this cost us a lot of tax money, a lot of tax money. And all of this could have been solved if, like Leticia, just used her disability money, got into Section 8 housing, and then just lived in in a rural area that she could afford, and just didn't harass people constantly. But again, she took her childhood trauma or whatever, and she's internalized it as justification to just abuse the shit out of people. And this is kind of how generational dysfunction can just continue to propagate over and over and over again. This is the whole reason why I still to this day go to therapy. I don't want my son going through what I went through as a kid, and I don't want myself doing what my dad and my mom did to me. And I also don't want my son having to deal with the emotional issues that I've developed from my catastrophic injury in the military. This is something I work on all the time. And same thing with my marriage. I'm always working on my marriage. I'm always working on my relationship with my son. I'm on a completely different continent than my family. I've talked to my son once a day, and I've talked to my wife twice a day. And I do this religiously. It keeps me centered. And the whole thing is I want my son to have a better life than me. I do not want to continue a cycle. And it's something you got to work at. And it's something that caused me to have to make drastic, life-changing decisions. When my son was born, and then when I had my incident with struggling with alcohol, I had to make the